Thank you guys. So, okay, so I have questions. I don't know if anyone else has questions. I'm sure you do. If you do, go ahead and drop them in the chat. And while I'm waiting for you to do that, I'm going to ask questions because I have like a ton of questions. I had to like write them down. And if you don't want to put them in the chat and you just want to raise your hand and come on, that's fine too. You know how we do. You're more than welcome to do that, and we'll bring you on camera. Okay, so I'm so blown away. I told you I just watched it, right? Watched you on the YouTube videos, and then I sat and I watched, read your website, and then even listening, I'm still like blown away. Like this is so freaking cool. Like I feel like the whole world just needs to know about this. Okay, so here are my questions. This was funny because um, it probably has nothing to do with anything, but I'm gonna share it anyway. When I first got married and moved to Inglewood, my mom, who this is cool because of this. My mom had a friend and she had a farm. Don't ask me where the farm was. I didn't even know that, there was farms in Chicago anywhere. But she had, I guess, a garden, and she would always come to my mom's house, and she would, lift up the back of her station wagon, and it was always filled with produce. And so she would always give my mom some. So my mom said, You are, she says, Oh my gosh, you just moved over there. Come get some vegetables. And I was like, What? I was at her house, like just visiting. And she was like, Come get some vegetables. It's like, What are you talking about? So I came to her house and she gave me all of these bags of groceries and like individual bags of groceries. And she says, Now I want you to go to back to your house on my new block, and I want you to take a bag of groceries to each person, to each neighbor, and introduce yourself. I was like, what? I had to be like early 20s. And I was like freaking out. Like, are you serious? And she says, yes, because this is how you build community. Is you go and you're going to introduce yourself to the neighbors and you're going to take them some bread, fruits and vegetables. And this reminds me of that, like in a big scale, like, the ability to connect people through the giving of something as simple as produce, fresh produce. And it was so funny because the older woman next to me, I hadn't met her yet, and she was just like, Oh my gosh, come on in. And you can't just drop off vegetables. You have to come and sit down and have tea. I was like, What? She was like, we got to sit a spell. And it led to like a beautiful relationship. And I feel like that's what's happening with you all as you take these fruits and vegetables throughout the community, which is so cool. What exactly? I've read something on your website that said culturally affirming produce. What can you explain that term, culturally affirming produce? What does that mean?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and then Josh, if you want to add anything, please do. I think a big piece of that is that we want to give folks, I think even with um, okay, let me step back. So we want to go from neighborhood to neighborhood and make sure
Hmm.
that when we show up, folks know what the produce is. So it's not produce that doesn't look like something that they grew up with. And so that's a big piece of it. So, like, if we go to predominantly Latino neighborhood, we're not
Hmm.
going to show up with a bunch of produce that they've never seen and have no idea how to cook. Same with a Black neighborhood. And so, a big piece of that, and this was a big piece with COVID, is that especially when everything shut down, our bus
Hmm.
included, we pivoted very quickly to packing boxes,
Hmm.
and the USDA was a big piece of that. So the USDA had contracts, and we're contracting folks in Chicago to pack these pre-packed boxes full of produce, and we were kind of asked to consult, and we're not really listened to. And I showed up one day and to I just showed up one day and to like a predominantly black neighborhood
Hmm.
where these USD boxes were like filled with like a bunch of milk, some of which and it was actually milk that was expired, like a 5 gallon bucket of yogurt, some cheese, potatoes. apples and onions. And that was a box that was supposed to get a family of four through for a week. And, and like it's something like 82% of Black families are lactose intolerant. And this is a box that was like filled with dairy. And then the vegetables and produce in that box was potatoes, apples, and onions. And that was all there was. And so I was furious, and wrote to the company that had partnered with the USDA, and threw a fit. I threw a fit. I threw a fit. And
Good for you.
and and so part of that was like we provided a list of what would be culturally affirming produce. And so I was like, you need to have like some collard greens, some sweet potatoes, things that like folks in Black neighborhoods are going to know how to use. It's going to give them some comfort. And and so we helped change what those boxes look like. And worked with a company that they were contracting out for, and really helped to kind of change what those boxes look like. And our bus looks a lot like that. So we really want to buy produce that we know our customers want, and we want them to have that choice. So even if someone, and I think that that's a big piece for us, is that choice piece, because we know folks who are going to like food pantries often don't have that autonomy. They're just getting whatever people are throwing at them. And for us, that is not okay. We don't want that to be part of anyone's, like we don't want, food is so sacred, and it's so, we can't have nourishment unless we have some autonomy. And so that's a big piece of how the foundation of the bus and just how we operate our programs. And then Joshua, do you want, yeah, Josh, I don't know, Josh, if you want to add anything.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just follow up with, as far as fresh moves goes, we definitely tailor, our ordering each day by what neighborhood we're in. So we're very conscious of that. Like if we're in a primary Latinx community, we're very much like selling a lot of avocados, limes, and all that. So we order larger quantities of that. And the same when we go to African American neighborhoods, very much like a lot of like greens, and a lot of like apples. And we definitely want to make sure that, these are familiar ingredients to people's, traditional cuisines, in these neighborhoods. And at times where we are distributing pre-packed boxes, we've actually had several meetings with the distributor to make sure that, we're able to edit what is in the box to make sure that it's what customers need. And customers, have come to us and just be like, I don't really like what's in this box. I really use more of this. And we're able to pretty quickly change, what is given out. So customers, have that autonomy with what they're getting in, the pre-packed boxes in cases where we need to distribute that also.
I love that. And I just, it's funny because I remember getting those boxes when I was a young parent. And you know what I never used? Stuffing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, we would
Well,
throw away boxes of stuffing or we give them back. Like, what are we gonna do with this? We don't make stuffing.
yeah.
You know what I
And,
mean?
and I
Go
think
ahead.
another piece for us is like with our seniors, we do a lot of fruit and a lot of vegetables that can be eaten raw, because we know that they don't cook as often, and or have like limited access to stoves. And like my dad has a stove, he's an elder, but he doesn't really trust himself with cooking. And so we really try to tailor a lot of what we buy for, especially when we're working with senior homes, to make sure that they have access to things that they can easily prepare raw. Like, so those are some of the ways we tailor.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Janine asks, how did you increase buy-in for the collective, specifically for funders?
That's a good question. Um, well, one thing is, we started we started fighting back a little bit, but in like polite ways.
Tell us
But
how.
um, I think especially when we started getting when we got the bus, so we inherited the bus from another nonprofit that actually folded, because the bus is difficult to do. Grocery stores have razor thin margins, and we're talking big grocery stores. Like it's a 5% margin for large grocery stores, and so a tiny bus is not going to make any kind of profit. And we kept getting these funders who were like, well, how do you make this financially solvent and sustainable? And I was just like, are you serious? Like, we don't. This is educational. And like, there's no school. I was like, is there a school that makes money? And they were like, well, no. And I was like, well, tell me how grocery stores make money. And they're like, well, we don't know that. And so like part of it was just kind of educating funders about how, educational institutions don't make money, grocery stores barely make money. And when you're trying to combine those two in neighborhoods that don't have any resources, you are not going to make money. And so part of that was like, this is pretty much reparations, right? Like, y'all have not invested in communities for hundreds of years. It's time for y'all to invest in communities. You have incredible amounts of wealth. It is now time to spread that wealth and help people out. And we are doing it well. We are making an impact. You can see the impact when you come to, our farms. You can see the impact when you come and talk to the kids that we work with. You can see the impact on the fact that we have lines down the street coming to our bus to try to get produce. So, this is how we're making an impact, and you can see it. And so that's really, I think, a big piece of how we are trying to renegotiate how we work with funders. It's just, trying to be honest and not doing so much of the like, oh yes, we'll get that data for you. We give them a lot of data. We definitely tell them how many, I every month compute how many people Joshua and the team are really good about inputting everything into Square. I pull down those Square reports. We let them know how many people pay them, but we're also, I think, doing a much better job of like telling that story beyond those numbers, and definitely talking about how the impact is more than that. And these models are not sustainable. They're just not. And someday we may be able to get there, but not when we're creating band-aid solutions, because we have not had policy change, because we are working on, hundreds of years of reparations work that should have been done, years and years ago. We decided not to do that. And now we're living with those consequences, and funders have to really help fill in those gaps.
Yeah. Thank you. Andrew said, what kind of supply chain challenges emerged for Urban Growers Collective with the pandemic? Ooh, Andrew, deep.
It hit us just in the same way it's hit everybody. So, Joshua can definitely talk about some of the food issues we had. And the bus. We were supposed to originally, we have this new bus. We were supposed to get the bus in April of 2020, and we ended up not getting the bus until November of 2020 because of supply chain issues. Because we were just waiting on parts, and everything had shut down, and the bus manufacturer had shut down. So we waited for about 6 months, and the team, our team was incredible. And I just, huge kudos to Joshua and everyone who worked on the Fresh Moves team for just, they went into pivot mode and just started packing boxes and distributing boxes. And, and as he mentioned, we work with 15 different folks right now, just like bringing the bus, but also delivering boxes to a couple different health centers. But they went in and started doing about 30 different organizations during the pandemic. So we went from 15 to 30 different places delivering boxes that they were both pre-packing and picking up from the wholesale organization that we work with. So they were incredible. But we're also in the middle of a huge expansion for our organization. We're building our 9th farm, which is going to be a new 7-acre farm in Auburn Gresham, but also our first ever headquarters. So we're going to build. So right now we just have a kind of a satellite office that we just rent. We run an office space that Joshua's in right now, and it's just a small office. A small office space that's not attached to the farm. And we're going to build an actual education center that has like culinary space. Our Fresh Moves bus will be actually have a cooler space there, and we'll be based out of that space and not at a commissary. Down the road, we're kind of all over Chicago right now, and this will allow us to have a headquarters, but it's, doubled the price because of COVID. So
Uh,
it's a steep price now. So so
wow.
yeah. So
I grew up
COVID
in
is,
Auburn Gresham, so yay.
oh yeah, we're at 83rd and Loomis, I think. I think
Oh,
that's the,
yes. Oh,
so
cool.
it's a pretty exciting campus. We'll have a 7-acre urban farm. We'll have we'll have this education center, which is going to be incredible. Um, and like a farm store there. And then it's also an anaerobic digester. So it'll be able to take 200 tons of food waste a day,
Mhm.
which will not go to landfills. We'll be able to have compost that we'll be able to sell to gardeners and farms across the city, which will be um, amazing. And yeah, and it'll be like completely green, a huge green campus, and it'll be the first of its kind in the US. So it'll be really exciting.
That's so super cool.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been into farming or gardening or any of that stuff, but you guys are like making me like, oh my gosh, I need to see this. This is awesome. Let me ask you this. How do you mentioned preschool? All I could see was my Misha baby, who is like 3, like eating. I took her to the strawberry field and she was
Mhm.
eating those strawberries right off the thing, and I was like, they haven't been cleaned, right? But she didn't care. So how are you doing? Where are you getting the children from both the preschools and for the
Mhm.
youth that you're doing? Where do you get those children from?
So we work with a Head Start program and right outside of Bronzeville.
Okay.
So it's on State and 51st essentially. Um, and so we've been working with them. This is actually our 10th year. And yeah, they just we have about 140 preschoolers in that program.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, they're just a blast. They're so cute and wonderful. And just like it's so fun to see how especially 4-year olds, like, we have all these parents who are like, oh, my baby won't eat kale. And then I get out there and our educator, Becky, who's incredible. She's so good with these little ones. But you hop like a bunny and you eat kale like a bunny, and then all those 4-year olds will totally eat kale. So it's just a blast. And then they'll cry alligator tears when you forget to go buy the kale and eat like a bunny. So yeah, you play pretend, and kids will pretty much eat anything. So it's pretty great. I was just like, just eat like a bunny, because we also do a Cooking Matters class with the parents, and
Mhm.
teach some of the parents how to cook with some of the produce from the farm too, which is really fun. But for our high school program, it's mostly high schools from the neighborhoods. So we have um, urban farms kind of all over the city, and then and it's just kind of the high schools that are based around wherever those urban farms are
Mhm.
in the city. And a lot of our kids self recruit. So it's been really fun. So we've had like kids, it'll be like oldest brother to the youngest
Mhm.
sibling, cousins. So we've had whole families within our youth corps. And actually our farmer right now, who's our director of farms, he started with us when he was 10 years old. So when I started, so Eric and I were co-founders and started UGC. um, we worked together for 17 years. So I met Malcolm when he was 12, but Erica started the original organization, and so he came out when he was a 10-year-old. He was like, "What you doing?" And Erica was like, "I'm planting some greens." And so, he came down every day and checked out what was going on in the garden. And now he's 29 and is our director of farms and has been with us for 19 years. And then Darian, who leads our composting program, he started with me when he was 15. He was in my first high school year-round program.
Mhm.
And so he's been working with us forever. he's, 35, father of four. So it's just so
Oh my
fun to be
goodness.
able to see, to see these men grow up and
Mhm.
to have families. And then like Malcolm's son, or Malcolm's daughter is actually in the preschool program. So she comes out and like farms with me. And it's so awesome to be able to see like new generations growing up at the farms and to be able to see, just multiple generations. Yeah, just getting to see multiple generations be part of this process is really gratifying.
That's so cool. So one of the things that I noticed, something stood out. You said that families grow with you, and I saw
Mhm.
on the website. So you have they can buy plots and grow their
Mhm.
own vegetables. So do they rent it from you or
Mhm.
something? So how does that work?
So it's a $25 fee for the year. Um, and that's really just to make sure people show up because
Hmm.
we've noticed that when it's free, people sometimes don't come. So we're
Hmm.
like $25 for the year. So it's a 10 foot by 10 foot plot. And yeah, they can come out. You can grow whatever you want at your plot. And we have two sites in Chicago, both on the south side. And yeah, it's a blast. We have 70 gardeners with us. And I'm actually going to, if you follow us on Instagram, you'll see a
Hmm.
really fun post today by one of our community gardeners, and just about how much fun they're having at their community plot. Um, and yeah, it's just a blast. It's like so fun to be able to see folks who, are either amazing growers or brand new to growing,
Hmm.
but just
Hmm.
how invested they get in their gardens and how excited, they're just like, look at this tomato. And um, they get really psyched. It's really fun. And I think, the beautiful thing about gardening is like there's no right way, like
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
get to try things out. And one of the things I think about being an adult is that you never, when you're a kid, you get to like practice things and try things out. And if you fail, it's not that big a deal. But as an adult, it's a big deal when you fail. And like with gardening, you get to fail or succeed. And when you succeed, it's so awesome. And when you fail, you're just like, that didn't work. And so you get to kind of get the magic of childhood again, I think. And
Hmm.
it's just so fun.
Agreed, Mindy. Gardening is enjoying the fruits of our labor. I can see that. I happen to know that Mindy does a lot of community work, and right now her kitchen is full of rhubarb.
Ooh, my favorite.
Let me ask you this. So if how could how would you encourage listeners if they wanted to start their own thing? So maybe they're not in Chicago.
Mhm.
Maybe there's somebody else, and they're like, I want to, how can I do this in my community? Is it a lot to start a garden or to provide a space for other people to invite other people to do, to garden with you? I'm just wondering, like,
Yeah.
is this something that people can take and be like, oh, I can do this. I can start a community garden in my community with other people, or is it no, sort of strange?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the things so what we've done, and I think one of the best ways to do this is to, well, first off, see if there's anything already going on in your neighborhood, because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you just don't know. And, like I just wandered across, I'm in Chicago and Bridgeport, and I just saw a community garden I didn't know about when I was just walking down the street the other day. It was just kind of tucked in. So I think kind of seeing if there's resources around you already. Um, and then also trying to find, public land. I think public land is always a great way to do it. So like we partnered with the park district to create
Mm-hmm.
community gardens because
Mm-hmm.
that way they don't go away. So a lot of times when you have kind of community gardens that might be on a lot that's owned by someone else,
Mm-hmm.
they may sell it to build a house and then that community garden goes away. So if you can find public land to do it on, usually that means that it'll be in perpetuity and you can keep growing on it. And a lot of times, too, parks have resources to be able to do that. So it's a lot easier. They already have some dedicated staff that can help you with getting that started. So I think that that's probably for us, one of the ways that we found made it a little bit easier.
Wow.
But there are a lot of resources on just kind of starting community gardens. But the other thing is just kind of getting started. Even if you kind of live in an apartment, just having like a little raised, you can buy a little raised beds. There's a lot on Facebook Marketplace, and that's a really great way to do it. And you can grow a lot in a little tiny space. So you can always do just a little bit and get started.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Mindy said, do you have problems with death from the gardens?
Um, sometimes um, we I will say that like we have a garden actually in Grant Park, which is in the heart of Chicago. Um, and it's right across from Buckingham Fountain, and there's no fences, and we don't have a ton of stuff there. People kind of wander in and take a bite of this or a bite of that. One thing we stopped doing is growing things that we know will go away. So like tomatoes, we know like all the tomatoes will walk away. So we stopped growing tomatoes there because we knew that we were just never going to get them. So sometimes we kind of tailor what we're growing dependent on the site. But other times we just we try to build relationships. So with community gardens in particular, some neighbors would steal from other neighbors and there'd be that kind of drama, which definitely happens in community gardens for sure. But I think the better you do at actually building community, the less that happens. So when you talk to neighbors, when people get involved, there's just less of that, but when you don't include neighbors and people don't know who it's for, you're going to have people who jump the fence because they're like, is this free? I don't know what this is, and so I think the more inclusive you are, the less stuff that happens.
We also have we have a nice amount of homelessness downtown.
Mhm.
Does, I mean, is that why you leave it open? Because that would benefit those, the
Yeah,
people
we're
living
just
on
kind of,
lockdown so they can,
mhm.
'cause that would help, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and for that garden in particular, we're just kind of like it's a public garden,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't see a lot of vandalism there. We don't see a lot of, just a lot of issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that I do definitely think that when the more you're like this is mine, the more you open yourself up for that.
Yeah.
And the more inclusive you are, we just are kind of like, we're just going to grow a lot of food. And if you do take some, we probably won't even notice. So
Mm-hmm.
just, and it just makes it a little bit, yeah,
Less
makes it less
stressful.
of an issue. Yeah.
Less stressful, and it gets to
Yeah.
help the community, which is what you're really doing it for overall
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Wow, this was so good. Thank you for being here today. Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
having
sharing
us.
Urban Growers. I'm so happy that you guys came on today and that you were able to do this webinar.